Everybody, this is Jim with Harvest Harmonics, and welcome to today's episode of The Profitable Farmer. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking to you about our latest university results in corn at the Santander University in Colombia. They're a tier one university, and they just completed their thesis, of which we've just transcribed this. And I want to kind of walk you through this. Now, this trial was done on corn. A little bit of background. Now, we've obviously been using this, the Kiminasi plant booster. We launched this at the end of 2019. And in 2020, which was really our launch year, we really decided we want to get this out to the universities. We'd already talked to hundreds or even thousands of farmers by that point in the R&D phase. And we've already run a number of different trials, a number of different tests. And all the farmers were telling us they really wanted to see two things in order to be convinced that that our technology and our product was worth it, was actually worth trying, worth putting on their farm, and worth basically investing their money in. So we, of course, went out to try to expand and get as many farms using this as possible, not just here in the United States, but also around the world. And just to continue to pile up that evidence, because at the end of the day, farmers want to know that this is going to work in a real world application, right? So they're not just content to see only university trials, which may be very well controlled, but may also provide results which don't translate into field studies. But then they also don't just want field studies, because the lack of control on a real world application sometimes makes it difficult to really evaluate what is your technology and product doing, what is it doing versus a control, and are all the measurements being taken, are they all be taken in a professional manner. So we've been working really hard since 2020, late 2020 and 21, to get as many farms going as possible, to get university trials going. Of course, COVID was a big slow on that whole process. We expected to have over 100 trials completed by now, and already peer-reviewed journals published by here in 2022. But COVID happened. COVID was a thing. It shut down all the universities around the world. It shut down a lot of farms around the world. It really caused people to kind of, I think, go into a panic attack in some cases, but now I think we're kind of coming out of it. Finally, people are allowed to go out without masks and allowed to go out and, hang out with their friends and all this stuff. And of course, now that psychosis is sort of coming to an end, now we're really putting the hammer down and getting to business. So this first trial here was done in Colombia. It was done in South America. And the reason for obviously working with South America primarily is the fact that their growing season is a little bit different. They have more of a year-round season. It's not necessarily like here in the United States, where a lot of the corn farmers that are growing, let's say up in Illinois and Michigan and up in those areas, they're covered in snow. Some of them still might be covered in snow. I mean, I look out on my outside of my window here, and I've got 75, 80-degree temperatures. So I'm sure a lot of you guys watching this are probably thinking, I hate you. I wish I was in Florida, but that's one of the benefits of living here is we get great weather mostly year round. And down in South America, we took advantage of the fact that they have really good weather down even in the wintertime. So we were able to get that trial started toward the end of 2021. Now, of course, we've got more university trials going on a variety of crops. We have the country of Liberia, which is going to be doing 20 or 30 different professional trials for us. We got the universities in Nigeria, Pakistan, here in the United States, and a variety of other places, even in England, are going to be jumping on board. So we have a lot of trials that are going to be really going here in 2022. We have about 30 to 32 trials already ongoing, and another probably 100 at least that are already scheduled for this year. And we're planning to even expand that. We want to get 1,000 university trials around the world on a wide variety of crops. And we want results like what I'm about to show you to be widespread, because at the end of the day, yes, we can promote, we can tell you how good we are, we can show you the case studies, it all comes from our mouth. And of course, there's always a little bit of skepticism, because we're promoting our product and we have a sort of our own stake in the matter. There's always, of course, a little bit of skepticism. Are these guys just, snake oil salesmen? They're just promoting something or trying to sell me something, etc. So I want to show you this presentation here. And this presentation, again, was our translation of a lot of the results that we've seen. This is going to white paper and going to peer review very shortly. And of course, once the peer review aspect is done and that process is complete, you'll be able to, we'll of course share that scientific journal article so you can actually read the journal itself. In the meantime, I want to go over this. Again, this trial was on corn. Now, one question we get quite often with this, and this is one of the most common questions. In fact, by the way, as I go through this presentation, please, if you have questions along the way, ask your questions. But one of the most common questions I get is, okay, I see your results on strawberries. I see your results on potatoes. I see your results on corn. I see your results on nuts and tree fruit and all this other stuff. But how do I know it's going to work on how do I know it's going to work on my garlic plants? Or how do I know it's going to work on lychees? Or how do I know it's going to work on pineapples? Or one of those crops that I don't see in your list of case studies here? I want to just preface this by saying the Kiminasi plant booster is designed to work to improve microbial activity in the soil, as well as the efficiency of photosynthesis in the plants or trees themselves. And because of that core, we're handling that core aspect of plant development and plant metabolism, we see results on every crop. There really isn't a crop we've seen yet that has not gotten a good result on. If you're using a standard soil-based growing mechanism or growing techniques, you will see results with Kiminasi plant booster, bar none. There's absolutely no way you cannot see results with this. And if you're growing hydroponically or doing some other kind of growing method, then we can do more testing with you and work on that. Our system is designed to work on traditional soil-based growing, and as long as you irrigate and use soil, you're going to get amazing results like what I'm about to show you here. If you're not an irrigating farmer, we do have a future R&D project which should be completed by the end of this year to develop a foliar application which does not require irrigation. Of course, once we get there, we know that all of the dryland farmers are going to be able to benefit from this too. And we want to help you guys, believe me, the dryland guys as well, because we know you guys need it. It's just a matter of us doing our due diligence to make sure that our system for the dryland guys is completely working 100% the way we expect it to. And we have very high standards because we have to put our name to it, right? So we want to make sure that when we do have that foliar application, it's going to produce the amazing results you're seeing with irrigation already. So having said that, let's jump in here. And again, if you have questions along the way, type them in the comments. I'm happy to answer them for you. But once again, I want to just present to you this summary here of the study that we just completed here at the Francesco de Paula Santander University in Colombia. Again, this is a Tier 1 Agricultural Research Institute in Colombia, and we did this on fodder corn. So again, the aspect of this thesis that we're discussing here is to producing corn using the Kiminasi plant booster technology. And of course, Luis Carlos Herrera Carvajal was the principal agronomist that assisted us with this. And of course, Daniel Antonio Hernandez Mizar was our experimenter, our project lead. So the introduction basically is just to give you the background and the backdrop of this particular trial that we were doing. So Colombian fields throughout Colombia have been deteriorating, and this is actually happening in agriculture everywhere around the world, right? The soil quality and soil health is deteriorating because of prolonged, in this case, because of, they'll have heavy rains and then prolonged droughts, and it's kind of like not a consistent water pattern, right? And as a result, they also have inadequate practices. Now, with most agriculture, and in Colombia it's no different, the overuse of petrochemicals and other chemical-based fertilizers are actually deteriorating and depleting the soil. And what happens is they kill the microbes, the microorganisms in the soil. And when you do that, you begin to eliminate nature's natural way of converting insoluble minerals into usable form, or even nitrogen out of the air into usable form for the plants. And that means that you have to keep adding more. So the more chemicals you use, the more chemicals you have to continue to use in order to continue to get a good production. And over time, it really depletes the quality of the soil. So this is what's been happening in Colombia. The technological developments is very important to Colombian farmers, and that's why they chose to test the Kiminasi plant booster, because obviously, we're marketing this, and we know that this is the greatest leap forward in agriculture from a technological standpoint. Now, they installed this, of course, with the goal of improving corn crops for animal feed. Now, they're growing forage crops, meaning that they're using the plants themselves as well as the corn, and they're using it all for animal feed. So again, just to give you historical data on this field was producing low crop yields due to soil deterioration. They also have high production cost. Again, like I just mentioned, because of that depletion of the soil, they're seeing an increase in production costs. They have to add more and more chemicals in order to continue to get a good yield there. So they installed the Kiminasi plant booster. That was their first objective, to see if they can improve their overall production. They wanted to develop procedures for using this on corn crops, and of course they wanted to determine the effects of using our system on corn production. So the description here is, again, they're going to do a field and growing analysis, a yield analysis, and then a treatment comparison. So we're going to go into that, obviously. So the first objective of this course, install this on the experimental farm and show what the differences were. So the next objective is, of course, evaluate soil characteristics before fertilization, prior to planting, and then, of course, after harvest. Now, the purpose of doing 3 soil tests, which most farmers, you might do 1 soil test, but for the purpose of this, we wanted to see what the soil looked like prior to preparation for planting, right before planting, and then afterwards. We had that analyzed by our research corporation here to do the lab test. So let's take a look. They took samples from both fields. There's a picture of them taking soil test samples here. And here's the analysis. So what you see here in the results, again, this is the beginning of the field. You see that the soil was slightly acidic, which is actually good for corn growth. Not a particularly high salt content. Low organic matter in the soil. And let's see here, just phosphorus, average sulfur, average cation ion exchange capacity, high boron actually, which is interesting. Acidity a little bit fine, aluminum fine, calcium a little bit high on the calcium side, low on potassium, a little bit low potassium in the beginning here. And the final comparison here, we compared this to the beginning and the end. So after using Kiminasi, after actually the entire growth season, we noticed decrease in electrical conductivity, which is a good thing. You want low conductivity there. Slight decrease in organic matter, not much there. Slight decrease in carbon there. Again, they're pretty much equal. Increase of phosphorus, which is interesting. A decrease in available sulfur. Again, that's mostly taken up by the plants. That's fine. Decrease of boron. Actually, the plants absorbed most of that boron. That's where that went. And then, of course, you go down the list here. Now here we had right at the beginning of planting here, and again you see the differences here, and I'm willing to share all this with you. I don't want to kind of bog down and go into these in detail, but I'm happy to. What you're seeing here is overall decreases in electrical conductivity, organic matter, carbon, phosphorus, available sulfur. Again, most of this is of course being absorbed by the plants here. One thing they did see an increase is calcium saturation, magnesium saturation. They saw a normality or average sodium saturation and potassium saturation also. So the next thing was, of course, planting. Now they used a mechanizing planting mechanism here, and they basically used 60 pounds of corn for the Kiminasi field versus 50 pounds of corn seed on the control field, so pretty much equal there. And they wanted to see, one of the main things they wanted to see is develop procedures for the use of this technology. They wanted to really see what the effects would be on growth. And you see here in the pictures here that they had actually record growth at each stage. So it wasn't like they just had a little bit of increase in growth. They actually had record growth of the corn during every stage, from the beginning up to tasseling and even into production here. So the different variables that we actually measured here was the plant height, the stem thickness, leaf width, number of leaves, and the number of ears, which is of course the corn production. And here we see some different examples here. Now the green line here is with the Kiminasi plant booster, and you see here the plant height got all the way up to 282 centimeters, which is about 2.8 meters, and that's about 11 to 12 feet tall. Now versus control or the untreated, that was 104 centimeters. So again, you're talking about 5 to 6 feet tall. So basically, we doubled the overall height over the growing season here. Now, and this is just some examples of those different measurements here. And we measured across 4 or 5 different replications. I think it's 4 replications here. Now, a good study will usually use 3 to 4 replications. We used 4, I think, in 5 in some cases. We wanted to make sure this had enough replications for validity here. Again, you can put your comments in the questions or things in the comments, and we're happy to answer them for you. Now, in terms of the stem diameter, again, the Kiminasi plant booster, the dark green here on the top, And you see here that we had a much denser, much thicker stem all the way through. On the average, it's about 30%, I believe, more on the Kiminasi than the control. So basically here we had the difference between the different stages here on the stem. Next one is leaf width, and now this is basically measuring how wide those leaves are. And of course, that's going to translate into the availability of surface area for photosynthesis. The bigger the leaf structure, or the more leaves, obviously the greater intensity of photosynthesis, and that's going to allow the plant to generate more energy here. So here we have almost double in a lot of these cases. So at the 25% growth stage, we see 6.08 versus 3.3. From in the mid stage, 10 centimeters, I believe it is, versus 4.5. Here we have 8.75 versus 6.3 and 9 versus 6.8 there. So huge differences there. And here we have just the leaf width comparisons over different replications. And again, I'm happy to share this information. If you guys want this, you can email me at service. Let me put it here. Email me at service@harvestharmonics.com. I'm happy to share this presentation with you so you can study these in more detail if you'd like. But this is just going to kind of give you an overview of some of the results we've seen. Here we have the number of leaves, of course. This is per plant comparison. And of course, here you have, and remember, corn leaves are these are big, flat, broad leaves here, right? So here we had 6.84 on the average over the 5 different replications here. A 9.4 average at the halfway mark, 11.56 at the 3/4 mark, and 11.64 obviously at the end. Obviously at the end, it's not growing more leaves here, but you see that basically just showed an improvement all the way across as well. Again, we have the actual results here. Now this is probably the most important thing, and I've actually asked my guys to validate this. But here you see on the bottom the Kiminasi corn. And you see what the corns were looking like at the top here. Now, the very interesting thing is the Kiminasi plant booster was averaging 2 ears per plant. Now, most corn varieties, and this corn variety as well, in normal circumstances are only going to produce 1 ear of corn per stalk. So every corn plant, you're going to have 1 ear. Now, the primary reason for that is most of the time, corn only has enough energy to produce 1 ear per stalk. And if you ever get 2 ears per stalk on most varieties of corn, the ears are going to be smaller. That's actually one of the things you see here is the differences in size. So even with only 1 ear per plant, the Kiminasi was much larger as well. Now, just to give you an average here of the overall, and I'll go into the insect resistance things too. Just to give you an idea, that was a 100% increase in overall production. I'm going to get into the weights and stuff here in a minute, but the Kiminasi improved the production by 100% here. So huge differences there. Now these are army worms. There's a type of worms here that actually eats up on corn plants. As most of you guys know, insects and weeds are a huge factor here. So basically, you had with the crop booster, what they were seeing is 1 out of every 10 plants had these infestations of these worms, versus the control field, which had 4 out of every 10 plants. So from 40% of the untreated field here to only 10% of the Kiminasi field. And that just goes back to what we've been always saying, which is the Kiminasi plant booster is increasing the plant's health, and that will make the insects and diseases and things want to avoid, not as much diseases, but insects and funguses avoid treated fields, and they actually end up going elsewhere. Now, another thing that's very important here is the untreated field here was also sprayed for herbicides. In this case, it's a paraquat. They used 5 liters to control weeds on the untreated field. They did not use this herbicide on the treated field. Now, I personally would rather they left everything the same, but they did apply herbicide to the untreated field. But they didn't use herbicide on the Kiminasi field. So what does this mean? This means that if you're interested in saving money on herbicides, you should definitely be using Kiminasi Plant Booster, because our system will allow you to grow without having to use as much herbicide, or in this case, any herbicide. And here we have just measurements and differences of quality here according to the USDA measurements here. And I think both harvest and control were listed in the current phase. You see here the differences between Kiminasi Plant Booster, generally better across the board here against all quality measurements here. Again, I'm willing to let you look at that at a future time. And here we're talking about the actual weight of the plants themselves, because again, we're using this for forage. So they're actually using the plants themselves for animal feed. And what we're seeing here is that the Kiminasi field is weighing quite a bit more. In fact, it's about 5 times more than the control field here. So 4 to 5 times. On the average, it was 7.5 kilograms per plant sample versus only 1.5 kilograms. So you get a huge difference there between Kiminasi and control. Here we have the overall production here. And again, with the Kiminasi plant booster, this is across the 5 hectares that we had this trial going on. The Kiminasi plant booster, or we call crop booster, 79,664 kilograms of corn fodder versus only 11,672 kilograms. So again, 5x the amount of, actually it's almost 4x. It's about 380%, I think it was. Now, the last thing I want to mention is the use of water. Now, the interesting thing is the Kiminasi plant booster was watered for only 30 minutes per cycle, whereas the control was watered for 1 hour a day per cycle. So basically, instead of 1 hour, we used only half an hour. Now, the difference, of course, that means that the Kiminasi used a total of 94,770 liters throughout the field versus 189,540 liters throughout the field of untreated corn. So basically, we cut the water use in half. So all these results you've already seen with increased vigor, increased growth rate, increased ear corn production, no herbicide used, and we actually reduced the water usage of this corn by 50%. So if you are looking for reduction of water use, again, guys in California, guys in Oregon, guys where there's droughts, you guys should be eating this up because this technology will really help you save a lot of the water that you're having to use. And it's going to save you a ton of money and allow you to get a good crop as well. Here we were testing some of the quality measurements as well with Brix rating, and we see the Kiminasi plant booster averaged about 11.5 on the percent on the Brix scale versus only 8.7, and there was a differential of 3% here, so 3 to 4% more Brix, so the corn itself was sweeter. Lower titratable acidity, which is of course a bad thing, so we actually had lower acidity versus control. The average maturity was 4.2. Again, 8.7 Brix versus the 3.74 treatable acidity here. So it's basically reducing the acidity and increasing the Brix rate, which means higher quality. And some other examples here. Protein content, that's another factor. Now, anybody who's growing corn or using corn or any type of feed for cattle consumption, animal feed, the Kiminasi plant booster is showing higher protein content. So if you're looking to bulk up that cattle and get a higher poundage in this amount of time you have, then you need to be using Kiminasi on your pastures. You need to be using it on the corn or the feed that you're using because we're increasing the amount of protein. So here you see the protein content was 3.7 versus only 1.04. The amount of fat content was also higher at 1.63% versus less than 1%. And the amount of available minerals, of course, was 7.92% versus only 4.47%. So huge differentials in quality of feed as well. So we're not just talking about increasing yield, increasing growth, and reduced quality. We're seeing higher quality also. And that is a huge factor. Because if you really think about it, you need to, if you're growing this for feed anyway, it's real easy just to say, well, I only get paid $10 a ton. Well, what if your feed has more, it can be organic, use less chemicals, and have more protein and more quality measurements that you can sell to your farmers if you're selling it. If you're growing it for your own cattle, you need to be using this because your cows are going to bulk up. They're going to be healthier. They're going to be, the meat and dairy and everything coming out of those livestock is going to be healthier as well. And here, this was actually a shelf life, a post-harvest shelf life test that we did here. Now, what we wanted to show here is the Kiminasi will allow that shelf life to that corn and that product to stay fresh longer. And here, of course, we did show that the crop booster did have 2 days where it was fresh. The fungal presence, the fungus didn't really kick in until day 2 a little bit. After day 3, it started to get fermented and it started to get more acidic. But you compare that to the control field, and after the first day, we were already fermented. So we got an extra fresh day, an extra 25% where it stayed fresh, and then went to acid a day sooner as well. So now this is sort of a final diagnosis. Again, they're just summarizing everything here The end of 2021, they did this test with us. They increased yields by 67,000 kilograms, even without fertilizers. Again, we did not fertilize these fields. 583% more forage yield increase with 100% corn yield increase. So again, we almost 6x the overall biomass of this corn, and we doubled the production of corn over the course of this field here. The quality measurements, as we mentioned, higher protein, higher mineral content, and we did this with 50% less water. So guys, we're just super excited with this. And at the end of the day, I want to just kind of take a step back from just the farming, the economic thing for the farmers for a second. I just want to mention, guys, if this is going to make corn and wheat and production of food much healthier for everybody to eat, and it's going to help the livestock become healthier as well. So this is going to help us in a number of ways in terms of the improved quality and health of human beings and livestock. So it's a huge factors there. From an economic standpoint too, though, what we're also seeing is that you're going to be able to use less water, use less herbicides, use less chemicals, use less fertilizer, which is these are all huge costs right now, especially now as the cost of fertilizers and inputs are skyrocketing. The Kemanasi plant booster will help you get a good crop out with less inputs. So if you're interested in saving money on inputs or just not using as much chemicals from a health perspective, Kemanasi will definitely help you with that. And on the profitability side, of course, we're increasing yield dramatically as well. So really, at the end of the day, guys, I'm just going to have one more call to action. Guys, give us a call. We want to talk with you. Our email address is there. I'll put our phone number up here as well. I think you can see it on the right here, but let's take a look at our phone number there. Give us a call at 727-324-6750. We would love to work with you on your farm so you can become part of the future of farming today so that we can all eat healthier, and you're going to make a lot more money with Kemanasi, even on commodity crops like corn and wheat and soybeans and everything else. So join us in the agricultural revolution now before everybody else jumps on board so you can get the economic benefit as well as the health and overall quality benefits as well. I hope to hear from you guys soon. We'll talk again tomorrow, and have a